You can listen to both sides, but if one side is lying,
Yes.
then to treat an inaccuracy or something that is false
That's a half-truth.
as if it is just as valid as somebody who is speaking from a place of expertise or a place of accuracy is part of, I think, the problem that we've created. That's its own version of political correctness, is like, no, what everybody says is valid. I'm like, no, like, if someone's lying, if someone's being inaccurate, if somebody's being cruel, you don't say, well, that's just as important a perspective. The conversation we're trying to have and how we have these conversations has to be rooted in reality.
4 Americans from different backgrounds, Republican, Democrat, independent, first-time voter. What happens when these perspectives converge?
You get to be free.
Yeah, but we have like the most incarcerated people on the planet.
But we get the chance to fight.
You can hold the government accountable. You can't hold the corporation accountable.
You could vote on corporations. Don't buy their product.
Does anyone here think that America is more prejudiced today than it was 50 years ago?
50 years ago, no. I think 20 years ago, yes. We've definitely moved somewhere from 50 years, like Obama, like recent Supreme Court justices. I think we have made so much progress, but I feel like in the past 10 years, we've gone back a lot.
Do you think Obama could happen again in your lifetime?
In my lifetime, yes. Now, no.
And when I say Obama, I mean like somebody who's the first in that same way. So do you think in your lifetime you'll see like the first gay president, the first woman president, the first indigenous president?
I think I will, because I think the pendulum will swing back.
So I want to ask Joanne, are we better today or are we worse off today?
I actually think we're much better.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, things were so completely segregated. I didn't know what it was like to have a friend that was a person of color. And when I turned probably 12 years old, the Chicago public school system started this busing program where they would bring kids from the south side of Chicago to the north side and vice versa. And I made my first African-American friend, Angela. And oh my gosh, I was like, this is amazing. We're all the same. So everything that I had seen up until that moment just disappeared, because all of a sudden I was exposed to other people of other colors. From there, I made the decision to go to Lane Technical High School, which is a high school in Chicago that draws from the entire Chicagoland area. So you make friends from the south side, from the west side, from downtown, from the north side, and it all comes together in this microcosm that was just this perfect world. All of a sudden, it just worked. We came from every socioeconomic background, all races, all religions. We didn't care. And that was so different from 1976, 1977, 78. Things were very racist. It's embarrassing to think of what things were like. So yes, I think things have changed tremendously.
Do you feel like we have a lot of prejudice today?
Compared to what we had in the 70s when I was much younger, it is not as bad. Does it still exist? Absolutely, in various forms. But I think we've made huge strides, and I think just the fact that we're all here together having these conversations is amazing. It doesn't matter the color of our skin, where we come from, what we have in our pocketbooks. The fact that we can just get together and have meaningful conversations, I think is a huge step forward.
Yes, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there's been growth from a sexual orientation front, racial front, gender front, and so many other fronts too. But when there are people who control systems that are making choices that hurt somebody, so for me, it goes back to how are policies and laws that are written by people in power, how are they impacting people? If there's such a divide between what I believe in values and who's representing me, like, where is the accountability?
I think that like lack of accountability also that we're seeing now more than ever comes to the loss of conversation and debate and friction in general. We should be angry about injustices that are happening and how it's affected our lives and affected our neighbors' lives and affected the people who can't defend themselves. We should still, as hard as it is, continue to keep the conversation open and continue to engage, because whether their vote was right or wrong, We're in the now, and separating them and cutting them off is just gonna lead to more disconnect and more of these things that we're angry about. I've only seen the current political climate we've had in terms of how politicians speak about each other, how politicians speak about people. People my age don't think that there is any different way to talk in regards to politics. And I remember like seeing videos of John McCain and Obama debating when someone heckled from the audience, like, go back to where you came from, or something along the lines of some racist remark to Obama. Yeah, and McCain addressed that and said, no, this is not what we're about. I disagree with him, but we're not gonna resort to prejudices. And compare that to how you see politicians talk now. I have extreme problems with how our president talks about people and how he minimizes and groups and dehumanizes people. And I think that's where we've gone back so much because we aren't even fazed by it anymore.
Yes.
At the beginning, it's jarring, but he's the outsider and he's gonna fix it. And like, we're gonna look past it for now, just for this. But now we don't look past it. It's just not even there. For me personally, how I saw that I needed to change it was that I couldn't come into these conversations trying to prove my point, to convince them, to show them. I had to genuinely ask. As I show curiosity about them, it's human nature to show curiosity back.
Now, how do we do that when the politics has become so personal? And you add on top of that, all of these major issues we're talking about get framed in existential ways.
We make it personal because that's easy. If I make it about me, I don't have to talk about like the data that informs my opinion or how I can reinforce my opinion in a way that is broader or beyond my own experience and perspective. It's not just a crisis of division, it's a crisis of critical thinking. You can listen to both sides, but if one side is lying, like, then to treat an inaccuracy or something that is false
as a half-truth,
as if it is just as valid as somebody who is speaking from a place of expertise or a place of accuracy is part of, I think, the problem that we've created. That's its own version of political correctness, is like, no, what everybody says is valid. I'm like, no, like, if someone's lying, if someone's being inaccurate, if somebody's being cruel, you don't say, well, that's just as important a perspective as somebody who is coming to the table going, yo, there are real ways that we as the richest nation on the planet can make sure everybody has health care, can make sure that everybody lives in dignity, can make sure that the average homeless person in a place like Dane County is not 9 years old.
And I actually want to jump in on this because with expertise, it's a question I wanted to actually ask you specifically. To this point of personal politics and public politics, through the lens of like reproductive rights. I'm a twin. I'm also a preemie. So I was born like, I think 4 or 5 months in. The doctors told my mom like early in her pregnancy, there were complications. It would be wiser to abort the weaker fetus, being myself, because I have an extra chromosome, and from the data that leads to disadvantaged health. So I believe in a woman's right to choose, because I am not a woman. Like, that is actually not my right, right? Like, just full stop, not my right, right? And it's tense because I'm like, I wouldn't be here if not for my mom's beliefs.
Yeah, so I think that goes back to the question that Steve asked originally, which is, are we more prejudiced than we were 50 years ago? So in my lifetime, and when you were born, your mom didn't not have an abortion because it was illegal for her to not have an abortion, right? She made the decision based on her personal beliefs to carry a pregnancy to term. You exist in a context where your mother had access to abortion legally without being criminalized, and you still exist. I exist in a context where my mother had access to abortion, and I still exist. And I think that's true for most of us. I don't really think it's a question of whether or not you believe in abortion or not. I think it's a question of whether or not you think the government makes that decision for you.
Let's let Joanne jump. Is there anything you've heard from our friends here that has given you pause?
You know, we have something in our Constitution that talks about life, liberty. Well, life to me means I have the choice what to do with my life. I have the choice of what to do with my family's life. It's not going to be put in the hands of the government. I had a friend growing up that didn't have money for an abortion, and she found herself pregnant at 17 years old. And do you know what she did? She went horseback riding, hoping and praying that that would terminate the pregnancy. It is not the government's decision. It should be my decision.
Well, I personally have my beliefs about abortion. I know on a public space, I have different beliefs because at the end of the day, like when I actually cast a vote, that affects so many more folks. But I have been wrestling with it.
I want you to think about that from like a gendered perspective. We live in a society where women couldn't vote for the majority of the history of this country. People will say like, some of my best friends are black, right? I love that example that you used. Is like, part of the reason I think we're less racist is because I grew up in proximity to people of color and was allowed to have meaningful relationships to people of color. And we talk about that when we're talking about racialized difference, but we don't talk about that when we're talking about sexism, right? Because we know that men being in relationship with women doesn't make them less sexist, doesn't make them go, oh, women should get to vote. I have a mom, I have a sister, I have a wife. These are people who are important. And so I do think we have to like acknowledge that there is a concentration of power and voice in our society, and part of like the conversation we're trying to have and how we have these conversations has to be rooted in reality.
I'd like to quote Michael Jackson: if you want to see the world a better place, take a look at yourself and make the change.
Okay, man in the mirror.
I did not expect
That's why
that
I'm
quote.
starting with me.